Amelia was not the kind of nurse who lived for recognition or praise. She was the quiet angel in white scrubs who worked long hours at St. Grace Hospital, her hair often tied back in a simple bun, her face showing the marks of sleepless nights and endless double shifts, yet her eyes always glowed with kindness whenever she walked into a patient's room. She had chosen this career not because it was easy or glamorous but because she had once been on the other side of the hospital bed, a frail teenager praying for her mother's life while doctors whispered words she barely understood, and when her mother had passed away, it was a nurse who had held her hand, told her she was not alone, and gave her the strength to keep going. From that moment, Amelia had made up her mind, she would be that kind of nurse for others. But life had not been kind to her since. Her small paycheck barely covered her rent and the bills of the tiny apartment she shared with her younger sister, Lily, who was still in school. Every month, Amelia sacrificed her own needs just so Lily could have books, meals, and shoes without holes. When she walked to work each morning, she wore the same faded coat and carried the same old handbag, not because she didn't care about appearances but because survival always came before luxury. And yet, despite her struggles, her heart remained gentle, her smile remained warm, and her patients adored her for her selflessness. One rainy evening, Amelia was assigned to care for a little girl named Sophie, who had been admitted for a serious infection. Sophie was delicate, with golden curls and big brown eyes that mirrored innocence itself, and she clung tightly to a stuffed lamb whenever Amelia checked her vitals or sat beside her bed. The child's father, Daniel Carter, was a tall, well-dressed man whose presence alone carried authority, though his eyes softened every time he looked at his daughter. Amelia learned quickly that Daniel was not just any father, he was a wealthy entrepreneur, the kind of man whose name appeared in business magazines, though he never mentioned his success while at his daughter's bedside. Instead, he stayed late into the night, holding Sophie's hand, reading her stories, and thanking Amelia for every small gesture of kindness she offered his daughter. Amelia had encountered many parents, but there was something different about Daniel. He noticed things others overlooked. He noticed how Amelia skipped her dinner break to soothe Sophie through her fever, how she hummed lullabies softly until the girl drifted to sleep, how she walked into the room with a tired frame yet carried herself with an unbreakable spirit. One day, when Sophie finally smiled after days of fever, Daniel said quietly to Amelia, "You have given my daughter more than medicine, you've given her comfort. How do I ever thank you for that?" Amelia blushed, shaking her head, insisting it was her duty, nothing more, but Daniel saw beyond the modest words. He saw the woman who hid her struggles behind her uniform, who cared more about others than herself, and in his heart, something stirred, a quiet admiration that grew with every passing day. As the week went on, Daniel brought small gifts for his daughter, but he also began bringing an extra cup of coffee for Amelia, or leaving a sandwich on the counter when he noticed she hadn't eaten. She always smiled politely and said she couldn't accept such kindness, but he gently reminded her that even caretakers needed care. When Sophie's condition improved and the doctor said she would soon be discharged, Daniel felt an unexpected pang. He realized that without the hospital visits, he might never see Amelia again. He wanted to know more about her, to hear her laugh outside the sterile walls, to discover the woman behind the uniform. But when he asked Amelia casually if she ever went out or did anything fun, her answer pierced his heart. She smiled sadly and said, "I don't have much time or money for those things. Taking care of my sister and my work doesn't leave room for anything else." That night, Daniel found himself staring at his reflection, wondering why the thought of Amelia going without joy unsettled him so deeply. He was a man who could buy anything, yet here was a nurse who deserved the world and lived with almost nothing. The hospital staff began whispering, noticing the way Daniel's eyes followed Amelia when she walked into the room, the way his smile softened whenever she was near. But Amelia never imagined anything could happen. Men like him belonged in another world, a world of glittering parties and expensive gowns, while she couldn't even afford a simple dress. When the hospital announced a charity gala to raise funds for children's health care, Amelia's colleagues encouraged her to attend, telling her it would be fun, a chance to feel normal for a night. Amelia laughed off the idea, knowing she didn't own anything even remotely suitable for such an event. She didn't confess it aloud, but deep down, she wished she could go just once, to experience the beauty of dancing under chandeliers, to wear something elegant instead of scrubs. On the day Sophie was discharged, Amelia hugged the little girl tightly, whispering, "Be strong, little one," and Sophie whispered back, "Thank you for being my favorite nurse." Daniel watched the exchange with misty eyes, and as Amelia walked away, he made a decision that would change everything. That evening, he found her in the hallway, nervously shifting from one foot to the other as she finished her shift. He held a small box wrapped with a blue ribbon in his hand. "Amelia," he said gently, and when she turned, he added, "You've been there for my daughter in ways I can never repay. But I don't want to say goodbye like this. There's something I'd like to ask you." Amelia's brows furrowed, and she looked uncertain, but Daniel took a deep breath. "There's a gala this weekend. I know you probably think it's not for you. But I'd be honored if you'd be my date. My first real date, actually, since," he paused, his voice catching with unspoken pain, "since my wife passed away years ago." Amelia's heart pounded in her chest. The thought of standing beside him in a room full of wealthy strangers made her stomach twist, yet the sincerity in his voice was undeniable. She whispered, "But I don't even own a dress." Daniel smiled, holding out the box. "Then let me fix that. Please." Amelia hesitated, torn between pride and longing, between fear of stepping into a world she didn't belong to and the rare chance of experiencing something extraordinary. As her fingers brushed against the box, her eyes met his, and in that moment, she realized this was not just about a dress or a gala, it was about being seen, being valued, being asked not as a nurse, not as someone struggling, but as a woman worthy of love and respect. And for the first time in years, Amelia allowed herself to dream.